I know the title sounds like clickbait, but I really went from high school dropout, GED, to my PhD. And I'd like to share the story with you. Once upon a time, I was a young girl and I had the privilege to be able to choose an area of interest. And some of my friends went into horseback riding, some went into sports. I followed the pathway of dance. My first dance experience was ballet, tap, and jazz. And I have to say, my first couple of years, it was all about the recitals, and I didn't. I enjoyed it. Obviously, I kept up with it, but it wasn't maybe my thing fully at that point. I even remember we came home from school, went out to play. We had a little place we went to play in the woods, and my mom would usually call me when it was time to come in to get dressed to go to my ballet, tap, and jazz class. And I remembered hearing her calling me, and I pretended that I didn't hear because I didn't want to go to my dance class that day. Fast forward many years, and I think I found that peace that the dance world would offer to me as a very introverted child. Started to realize and find that click between music and expression, and then putting that when you're able to cross the boundaries to be able to be on stage and had the opportunity to be someone different, it all of a sudden really became my passion. That started my career of wanting to become a ballet dancer, which then put me down the next kind of pathway here, taking it much more seriously. I lived in New Jersey at that point, started commuting into New York City during the summer to take very serious ballet classes. At that point then, I made another step into my career in this pathway when I auditioned and was accepted into one of the prestigious ballet schools in New York City, the School of American Ballet, which for anyone in the dance world knows that is really the training ground for future New York City ballet dancers and other elite companies. At that point, I was 13 years old. I was a freshman in high school, my first years in high school, and that choice to be able to start attending School of American Ballet, or SAB, then charted the rest of my educational career. Because at that point, I had to then start commuting into New York City from New Jersey, the suburbs of New Jersey, to be able to get in there into the city in time for my 5 o'clock classes, take ballet classes, and then jump on the bus again to go back home to New Jersey. But that meant that I couldn't stay a traditional high school day. Modifications, changes to my schedule, and I was able to start leaving school a little bit early to be able to get onto the bus to get in New York City. This continued on for the next year or two until when I turned 16, and my classes were all of a sudden now going to be starting at 10 o'clock in the morning, which really meant I couldn't really go to school for very long at that point. So at 16, my mom and I went to talk to the school, and I officially dropped out of school, moved into New York City in an apartment, a brownstone apartment on the west side, Upper West Side, with 2 to 3 other dancers training at the School of American Ballet. Went on to correspondence school. Now, again, think this is some experience, some age here. This is before the internet, which I know is hard for some people to believe because they've always lived with the internet. But this was before all that was, or it was a common thing that we all knew about. We didn't have computers or anything back then. Gosh, that makes me sound so dated. Correspondence school truly was in the mail. My dad always kind of teased me saying that I was going to get my future high school diploma in the post office. Well, as you can imagine, I still had 2 years of high school left, and I kept on my rigorous academic schedule and tried to take Algebra 2 and French and all these high-level classes, which were disastrous correspondence. Remember, there was no internet. There were no videos to go and watch. It was all just reading books and handouts, and feedback took forever to get because, again, it was all through the mail. As you can imagine, that slowly just crashed and burned. And at that point then, another friend of mine, also similar situation, we decided that we'd go take our GED. Oh, and I will say on the flip side, a lot of other of my friends that did go different ways, like so there was a professional children's school, but it was very pricey. And correspondence seemed perfect. So anyway, I wanted to put that in there so it's not like everyone who moves into New York City to study ballet truly has to drop out of school. Fast forward just a little bit. Yes, we did go forward, and I remember going into one of the PS elementary schools in New York City and had to be there at like 6 o'clock in the morning and took my GED. Fortunately, I passed and I had my GED. That is my high school career. I never had a graduation, never had a senior or junior prom, really had very little high school experience because I was each year, my first 2 years, I was leaving school earlier and earlier because I had to get to my ballet classes at earlier and earlier hours. So there's my GED. Fast forward through my dancing career, I had some wonderful experiences. Trained in New York City, never made it into the big leagues of ballet companies, but did have some wonderful opportunities working with Richmond Ballet, Charleston Ballet, Ohio Ballet, Ballet Oklahoma, so several different ballet companies. Also during that time, had that commitment to my mom that I would eventually, again, finish up and go to college. So across that time, it was always in the back of my head. I had some serious injuries that I was able to have some surgeries, come back slowly from, but I knew my years were limited. At that point, the natural career does seem to be that are you going to teach ballet? And I was already teaching a little bit at some other studios for some side money. Ballet dancers in companies that are not major leagues don't make a lot of money. So my first piece now was starting to slowly take some college courses. I took my very first one was fiction appreciation. Again, it was just something to start tiptoeing into. And then slowly, I met my husband at this point too. We then decided to move to Oklahoma, which is where I joined Ballet Oklahoma. And at that point then I started taking more and more serious university classes while I was dancing, and then slowly did transition to being full-time to be able to start getting some of my coursework behind me. It was during that time period I was attending University of Central Oklahoma, or UCO, and I took a psychology class. So remember, my mindset at this point was that I was going to go and get my degree in fine arts so that I could teach ballet or dance at a university. That was kind of where I was thinking I was going. But then I took the psychology course, and something about that course just clicked to me. I was like, it makes sense. Oh my gosh, all these things. And having lived through the career of a ballet dancer, as you can imagine, there was a lot of different things that every career struggles with, but one of the main ones also was eating disorders, body image disorder. That just was a piece that just kept poking into my head. Psychology started to kind of explain some of that. Anyway, fast forward, I decided then to not go for my bachelor's in fine arts, but to look and go ahead and look at a bachelor's in science, or to be able to have a major in psychology. Went through psychology, realized that during this time period I really liked the idea of focusing and supporting kids. I love the idea of really being actionable in what you could do to help people, and bigger systems pieces, which at that point I didn't have that word to put on there, but I remember just thinking that there's got to be stuff behind the scenes that you can do to be able to, rather than just put band-aids on things. Fortunately, my husband and I had moved to Florida. I was then finishing up my final years for my undergraduate at the University of South Florida. Oh my gosh, it was just like it was supposed to be, because the school psychology program at University of South Florida fit perfectly with the way that I was already thinking in my head about my future career. The real focus on problem solving, being actionable, organizational infrastructure, which again now I think of as infrastructure and systems, and the bigger macro and micro levels you can zoom in and zoom out on. I was very fortunate. I then applied for and did get accepted into the PhD program at the school psychology program at the University of South Florida. But it wasn't all that easy, because during that time period then too, I started at a doctoral level, was accepted there, got in through my first year, and we decided that we wanted to start our family. As I was also navigating and matriculating through that first year or two, I decided that, you know what, maybe I just want to get out there in the field first. I had wonderful colleagues that were coming in. Some of them were coming in with already previous experience. They were coming in with their EDS or their master's, and they were working on their doctorate. And they were asking such great questions. They had such knowledge base. And to me, I wanted that, because I felt like they were getting even so much more, even though my amazing opportunities I had by my graduate career and USF in the school psych program, I felt like they were getting that much more because they had all this other foundation and background. Move forward a little bit, I decided to switch from my doctorate to my EDS, did my EDS, went out in the field and worked. At that point, then I also got pregnant with my second child. We went forward, kind of moved through there. I was out in the field for about 2 years, decided I needed to come back for my PhD. I had some of that background that I think now my questions were going to be even better. The things I wanted to learn were very different than had I personally stayed in straight through for my doctorate. Went back, finished up my doctorate, and then went back out and worked in the schools. That's the first part, part one. So you see, that really was from high school dropout, GED to PhD. It really did. It was a complete story. And is it happily ever after? Right now, before I finish that part out, go ahead and subscribe if this is kind of some fun content. Hit the like button if you've enjoyed and you've appreciated listening to this story. And also, really importantly, leave some feedback, comment, thoughts, questions, ideas down below. I'd love to be able to start building this community for all of us, and it'll be interesting to hear some of your thoughts, some of your ideas and feedback. So was it worth it? I'm going to talk about that in my next video that's going to follow right after this one, and talk about some of the opportunities that I've been able to have with my doctorate in school psychology.